Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Outside the Barn podcast, season 2, episode 2. I'm Kendall Shell with me and my co host, Trevor Mbakwe, as well as Blake Hoffarber. Fellas, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about the show. I get the chance to watch the Gophers play in person tomorrow versus New Orleans, so I'm excited to get a chance to be back in the barn. How you doing, my man Blake?
Doing well. Had a good Thanksgiving with the family and watched, a couple of the last games and hoping to go to a game here soon. But hopefully I can turn things around from the last time I was watching them play out west.
Yeah, man, that was a tough one. I mean, let's just start there, Blake. I know that was a tough loss. Let's not even try to look past it. Two tough losses, really, kind of last few games here of what I guess we all kind of thought is a promising team, a lot of talented team. But give your analysis, Blake. Man, what do you think went wrong last game, and how do we kind of move forward from there?
Yeah, man, I think we kind of knew this was going to happen just with the roster this year. But, I had a lot of hope. When I watched that Missouri game, at least in the first half, it was kind of like, oh, my gosh, they're rolling and versus a good team, hitting shots. Granted, everything was falling that game. But the last game I watched on TV, they were out at the Chase Center, obviously, where the Warriors play, and playing San Fran, a kind of a cool atmosphere, a cool game for them. But kind of a trap game too, a little bit neutral court, more home court for San Francisco, but it just looked like a totally different team to me. I think, obviously Garcia and Payne, and we got some bigs that can do some good things, but unfortunately the guards struggled that game a little bit, and there was a lot of turnovers, a lot of sloppy play, and it just wasn't what I saw in the guards earlier in the year. So hoping we can turn that around. Granted, some shots weren't falling and, guys weren't hitting shots that I saw earlier in the year, and that happens. But I think we just got to take care of the ball a little better and figure out more so who's going to, be the legit point guard and play majority of the minutes, because last game it was just a little too lackadaisical with the ball, I think, and just way too many turnovers for, a Big Ten team of Minnesota's caliber.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I don't want to continue to have this be like the narrative that we're saying these are good early season tests. But I think once again, like the Missouri game, I think this is good early season test. You're on a neutral court. You're going to be in a situation most of the times. Maybe you're going to be closer to a team home, like the Big Ten tournament. You're going to play. Is it Illinois again this year, or is it Minnesota?
Minnesota this year.
For the Big Ten, I think it's at Minnesota. Yeah,
so, hey, that plays in our favor. But I think it's a good test. It's your first true kind of road game, but it's a neutral site, so they kind of see like what it feels like to kind of be, backs against the wall. Obviously, it wasn't the best showing, losing by 20 to San Francisco. No knock to them, but we have higher expectations. But I think it's a great early season test, and hopefully we have another good one tomorrow, and then prepare for the Big Ten to start up versus Ohio State.
Yeah, I agree. I'm hoping that veteran leadership we have in the locker room starts to come out right now. You know what I mean? We have a lot of adversity already early in the season. And, I think Parker, I think Isaiah, I think those guys saw it. Dawson's obviously been around the block for a while. A lot of those freshmen last year got punched in the mouth a lot throughout that Big Ten season. So I'm hoping, they just come back stronger from this. And to your point, Blake, I think the guards got to start to get busy. They got to start to just be able to get some buckets for this offense to be able to go out and score. But other than that, it's hard to really put a finger on what's really going to take this team to the next level. I'm curious. I'll start with you, Blake. As far as team identity, if you were to coach, like, what do you think this team's identity is, or what do you think it could be for them really to succeed in the Big Ten this year?
I mean, to me, it's obvious, and unfortunately, it's not obvious yet. He's playing well, but the team's got to be Dawson Garcia. Not one man, but he's got to put the team on his shoulders and on his back a little bit and get going, and he's been getting busy, but it's tough, I'll be honest, and Trev, maybe you disagree, but to be a big, because bigs, like I said last time, they got to get the ball and have someone to dribble it up the court and score some buckets to create more opportunity for the big to have spacing down low. So, if the identity is Dawson Garcia, I think it starts with him, but the identity of the team has got to be a 10-man approach. I mean, we don't have one guy that's, he was a McDonald's All-American and all that and a really good player, but I don't think he can do it himself. He's not one of those types of players. I think we need some more players to step up, whether that's Ola Joseph, whether that's Payne, whether that's one of the guards. We just need some help. And I think, it was clicking versus that Missouri. I keep going back to that Missouri game, but it was clicking. Everyone was playing together, moving the ball around, taking care of the ball, hitting shots. And it just doesn't seem like that lately. And part of me thinks when I watched the San Francisco game, I know they were trying, but it just seemed like San Francisco had a lot more energy, a lot more toughness, a lot more grit. And I know that's not the case. We got some guys that have grit and, toughness and diving on the floor, but I honestly didn't see that as much last game. So I'm hoping they can turn around, realize that, hey, we're not losers. We're not used to losing, especially guys like Cam Christie coming in. That's a winner, right? A lot of these guys that are winners, we don't want a guy like that to be like, oh, it's okay to lose. Not that he would ever think that, but you don't want to have that mindset. You want to go in saying, all right, that was a terrible game. We played like, you know what? We got to figure this out. And I hope they take that upon themselves to do. And I hope Coach Johnson and the coaching staff makes them realize, like, that's not who we're going to be this year. And we got to turn it around, because we all know what can happen from last year. When you start losing 1, 2, 3, 4 games in a row, it spirals very quickly, and we can't have that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Agree. Completely agree.
100%. Yeah.
I agree. I think with
to your point too, like,
go ahead, Trev. Go ahead, Trev.
We gotta keep on that.
No, I think to your point, Blake, like, and Trev, I was actually going to come to you. Last year, I feel like the fan base was almost lost for a little bit, pretty much throughout the Big Ten season. And if we're being real right now, like, I'm going through social, I'm seeing what's going on, and I know you're going to the game tomorrow, Trev, so I want you to speak on it. But it seems like the fan base is pretty much already lost after the Mizzou game, after the USF loss. Like, I mean, I'm on social, like, I'm looking, I'm just like following it, and just the feel and the vibes of the program is tough. And I think we've all seen some of the pictures of just some of the emptier stands and the emptier games. And I think as a player, like, that's tough. I think that's tough to get up for sometimes. I think that's tough to, as a coach, to keep the locker room up. You know what I mean? When you don't even feel like you have that support. I think during our time, especially with like Tubby, there was a lot of just hoopla around the program, and I think the media does a lot, and really controls a lot of the narrative. And I think in a way, a lot of the media has been lost. And I think, during the Tubby time at the beginning, we saw how hyped they were. Tubby time, we're here, everyone's about it. And then towards the end, when he started spiraling, you kind of saw, them turn on him. And so for me, I'm kind of concerned with just that state of it, because in my opinion, I think, we still need to see at least through this season what's going on. But Trevor, I want to hear your thoughts just about, the state of like the fan base, kind of your feel. You're in Minne, you're around the program, like you're in the high school scene, what the kids are talking about, how it used to be, both of you as Minnesota high school kids looking up to be a Gopher. So talk a little bit about it, Trevor, and what you see right now.
I think so. The Missouri game was fun. I felt like, everyone's in tune. It was a random weekday night, so you saw the energy in the barn. I think the San Francisco one was the one that kind of took us back to last year, and I think that's when everyone's like, oh, here we go again with this. And to your point, like, once you start losing a few games, like, every basket that you miss becomes, the rim gets tighter and tighter. And, when you're at the free throw line, everyone's like, oh, there goes another miss. That can be, detrimental to a team. But also, I want to see the team, like, kind of play like how we did back, a little bit more full court press, getting those easy energy baskets, offensive rebounds, blocking the shot, doing those type of things, because that gets your own energy going up. And I know, like, to Blake's point, like, be tough, gritty, like, that's what we're going to have to do, especially in the Big Ten, because we're not going to be more talented than most of the teams we play. But, like, how do we show up? How do we create our own energy? How do we bring that energy back to the barn? Because if we start losing game, hopefully not. Like, to your point, Kendall, I want to see Coach Johnson ride out the year, and hopefully they have success, because I do still think he's the right coach. I do think there was some fortunate circumstances, but that's the way of the game. So I just want to see more just us up tempo, like, kind of playing together. Energy is there, dive on the floor, blocking shots, just crashing the boards hard. It was kind of what we did. We had athletes on the wing. We press full court. We had us crashing the boards.
We had athletes on the wing. You're talking about me too, right?
Yeah. Basically, yeah. So I think I want to see like Missouri. I think in the first half that was kind of what our identity should look like and can look like. We've shown that we can play that way. It's just consistent for 40 minutes.
And I think, Kendall, to your point, I totally agree with Trev, but to your point of like, how do we get the hoopla back, right? And we all know that it's easy. You got to get some W's, right?
Right.
There's something called a win that once you start racking up wins, right, the fan base comes back. And I think Minnesotans want to see, I'm biased, but I think there's no better ticket in town when the Gophers are good and it's rocking in there and they're playing a Big Ten team. It's a great atmosphere. People want to follow it. People want to go, even if it's -10 out. But when things aren't going well, man, it gets pretty quiet in there and the crowd gets scarce. The thing I hate, I grew up being obviously local cities kid and grew up watching the Gophers, but it's tough when I'm just, in the business community now or with friends and buddies and you bring up the Gophers, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, it's kind of like people roll their eyes a little bit like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And that just, it sucks to hear, right? Because we all, blood, sweat, and tears for the Gophers and maroon and gold. And we all are huge fans of it, obviously, and have been our whole life, at least Trevor and I. And it's like, it's tough to see. So I just don't know the answer. I think you got to get some wins. I think you got to get some good moments. And whether that's Dawson Garcia having a breakout season and killing it, even if they get a couple losses, like people want to see successes, whether it's individual having success, whether it's someone hitting a lot of threes, Cam Christie taking off being a freshman, like something to look forward to say like, oh, I want to go support the team because even if they're losing, they're working their asses off, right? They're diving on the floor, they're getting dunks, they're competing out there versus, hey, they're lackadaisical. Not saying they are, but you don't want them to get lackadaisical, lazy, playing cool. That just can't be our identity. We're not a team that's got talent like a Kentucky back in the day or someone like that can play cool and just have athletes that the game comes easy to them. We need to kind of act like it's more old school and toughness and nitty gritty, whether that's pressing. We got to get back to that style of ball. And I don't want to hate saying they're not doing that right now. I think last game they took a little step back, but we just got to get back to doing that and doing what they did, especially in Ben Johnson's first year.
Right. Minnesota fans are itching for us to win. If we come out and beat Ohio State and Nebraska to start the Big Ten season, but the bar is going to have 10,000 plus, people in the stands. We're waiting. We're all waiting for us to kind of break loose, kind of like football. Like to your point, like University of Minnesota, when we start off good, it's great. Then we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot. So I think we get a couple early Big Ten games, wins, and then the energy's there, and that's helps feed off the team, and who knows after that. But I could tell fans are still itching. They still care. We're just waiting, just for us to have that consistency.
Yeah.
And not that heartbreak.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think not to, one more thing, Kendall, I think what people, and it's not Ben's, it's NIL and the portal, and I don't want to blame NIL. Like, I'm not here to do that, but it's more so the portal. If these fans haven't had really somebody to cheer for 4 years yet. I mean, people just keep coming in and out of the program. So it's tough for fans to go back and say, oh, I've watched this kid for 3 years, or I've watched this kid for 4 years. Like, I become a fan of that player, that individual, whether it was Andre Hollins or whoever, right? These people stayed for 4 years. Well, now it's like, well, I bet you half the fans come back to those games and say, like, who's on the team now and, who's still here, right? It's kind of like it just keeps transitioning teams, so it's tough to stay focused with like who's still playing for our team.
Yeah, I agree. That's gonna be hard, man. That's gonna be hard. I was gonna say fans they're gonna have to get used to this new era of college basketball, to be honest. Like this is different. It's gonna be different. Like NIL stuff, like you could talk about it, like it's real. There's not a lot of NIL money with the Minnesota basketball program. It's known right now. And if we're going to want to compete, we're going to have to start to pay up. And also, when it comes to actual culture and tradition, fans are just going to have to get used to the new normal. I think that's all I'm going to have to say. Guys are not going to be here for 4 years anymore. Like, very rarely. Because if they're sitting on the bench, they're transferring. If they're really good, they're transferring up or they're going to the league. Or, that's kind of everybody else just falls in between. So, it's going to be tough. What do you have on that, Trev?
I hate it. I'm still hard to admit that it's the norm. Like, you see one. I was watching a Kentucky game yesterday. I can't remember the guy's name. He played at West Virginia for 4 years. Then he leaves, comes back for his fifth year. Now he's at Kentucky, and it's like it's just every year you got to get familiar with a whole new team. 1 year they're at Michigan, then they're at Kansas or Minnesota, then here. It's just like, how do you keep up? And let's be honest, I don't think we're ever going to get that NIL money. Like, just nothing against us. I just don't ever realistically see it happen. And you know, hopefully something changes in the near future when it comes to that. But it's going to be hard to get used to the new norm with UCLA and the Big Ten and like all the different changes. It's like what's going on?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, I mean, part of me is thinking, like, do you go into the JUCO, a little bit, right, and go after that and get guys that are experienced and just know, like, the whole knock on JUCO back in the day was they don't want to get a JUCO player because they're only going to be there two years or 1 year, right? Well, that's reality now, right? So you might as well take an experienced person that's played and coming out of JUCO that almost like a Devron Bostic, if you remember that name back in the day, almost, and Paul Carter, I think they were both JUCO players and came to the Gophers. And
well, hopefully, fellas, on the court, they figure it out soon. I think we all have faith still. I think we all have faith in Ben Johnson still and what he's doing. Trev, you got to bring the energy tomorrow night. I need to see you towel waving. I need to see you behind the bench, jumping up, whatever you need to do.
Throw my jersey back. I just threw my jersey in the wash, so I'll be ready. It might be it's not the right color, but I'll be on the court now. But I'm excited, though. I think it'll be fun. I think there's still a lot of hope around the team. I think there's a lot of fun. I think when the Big Ten season comes around, that's when your game goes up to a whole nother level. So I know playing at Ohio State, at Ohio State, it's going to be fun energy for them. And that's one of the only places I didn't win in the Big Ten was Ohio State. Blake, how about you?
I didn't either. That was one of the only ones too, and I think we never won at Purdue. For me,
nope. Yeah, I never won at Purdue either.
That was a tough place to play. Not that to derail the conversation, but boy, that was tough.
That was definitely tough. That was one of the hardest.
Yeah.
That was one of the hardest. It was sneaky tough. You wouldn't think Purdue was so tough. Like, why did it feel so tough? I don't know if it was the seats over there, but it was definitely one of my favorite. But you didn't derail it too much.
Well, at least when we were around, I mean, I guess when we started, I mean, they had some squads and they still do, but I mean, they were one of the top teams in the Big Ten, so they had players, and also it was, a tough atmosphere with the people there. I mean, I think IU is the same way. I always joke with my buddies. I went to IU; they didn't have great teams, but except for my freshman year, but it was hard to play there, man. Those fans were crazy, and that's one thing. Like, Minnesota's got to get to that point. Like, IU went through those seasons where they were not good, but you showed up and the fans showed up, right? I mean, they were rowdy, crazy. They were getting a lot of losses, but they still showed up. And I get IU basketball from a legacy perspective is a lot different than the U, right? But, we can still have that. But those teams were nitty gritty, Crean coached them. I mean, they were grinders, right? And that's what we need to be.
I agree. Out of all those arenas, Blake, what was your favorite one to play in?
It's a good question. I probably would think even though I struggled to play there, I thought the atmosphere was cool. It was probably Indiana. I mean, Michigan State was cool, but that was super challenging. I think Wisconsin just because of the rivalry game, but to be honest, I didn't love the Kohl Center. I thought it was just you could feel the hockey rink underneath it at times. I mean, it was just cold. Same thing with Ohio State. Evan will probably laugh, but I didn't love Ohio State. It felt like an NBA arena, right? Which some people think is cool, but I would probably say Indiana just because I thought it was unique. I don't know. What about you, Trev?
I'm gonna go Illinois. I love playing at Illinois. It's fun. The fans right behind the bench.
I did not like Illinois.
Illinois, the crush, I don't know. It was always fun playing there, especially because they have, Brandon Paul in them, so it was always a ranked game. And I just like the fans right behind the bench or behind the backboard and just like.
Did he dunk on you there?
See, here we go.
Hopefully maybe the producers can put a picture of him dunking on you right now.
No, it's a charge.
They can do a video.
I can't believe you said. Was it there actually? I don't know. Was it at Illinois?
Yeah.
And you still love Illinois that much, man?
We
Wow.
won. I had 20 and 15. I was good.
You set yourself
Yeah,
up
but
for
Brandon
that.
was
Trevor.
sure
I know that was that's because you Hopkins kids play no defense, so Joe Coleman got
Crazy.
that was a different I don't know. You like Illinois?
I didn't like Illinois. I mean, fine, but it was. I didn't like Illinois too because I hated running around like Dimitri McKinney and all them. They were tough to guard. They had good guards, man. And Trent Meacham, my freshman year. I mean, they had some good people, but no, yeah. Penn State was always. I didn't love Penn State either.
Penn State was gross. I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm jaded, but I would. When the barn's rocking, I would think people. I mean, Evan always says he didn't win at the barn, right? And he had some good teams, Evan Turner, but I think that's a cool atmosphere. It's more of a college atmosphere, but it's not cool, obviously, if no one's there too. So,
yeah, I agree. I agree. I can't agree with you, Trev. I don't know. I don't know about Illinois. That one just doesn't jump out to me. I agree with Blake on that one, but I say Indiana too because
I'll take it over in Tulsa.
Yeah, for sure, but that's not saying much. But Indiana's probably my pick too. I would say just because, well, Blake, our years, Trev, like we beat number 1 Indiana. In case Christian or anybody wants to be reminded of that, but we beat number 1 Indiana at our place when they had a lot of guys. They had a lot of guys on that squad, and then when we played at Indiana, I mean, it was almost like an out of body experience. Sometimes when it got so loud, how good they were. And I remember Tubby, the one time Trev tried to get the iPad up and tried to have the guards read the plays because we couldn't hear what they were saying, and that lasted 2.5 plays. There was no, it just they were always trying to figure out some way to make it work at Indiana. So I gotta say Indiana, man, it was definitely next level.
I remember I shot 2 technicals there, and I was the guy that they brought to the free throw line. I missed both of them, and I remember. I mean, I should have hit them, but the rim was literally just shaking. You could see it when I was trying to look at it. It was crazy because they were just riled up.
When Ralph, I was at home. I didn't make the trip. That was my redshirt year. Ralph,
it was that year. It was that year, man.
Yeah. And I got chills. You could see the whole camera shaking and everything. It's just like Indiana,
it was nuts. Yeah. And they weren't even. I mean, they probably beat us that game, probably, but I don't know who won that game, but. They weren't even that good that year, and it was rowdy in there. That's what I thought was the coolest thing.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, for another episode, I think that's the pros and cons too. When you bring up Indiana, when they're bad, they're the only thing in town. When we're bad, you go to a Wild game, you go to a Timberwolves game, go check out the Vikings. You have other, attractions. So it's a great thing also, but that's a tough thing about being in the Metro.
Yeah. Good point.
That's definitely a great point and definitely a topic of conversation we need to pencil for the next episode. But appreciate you guys today. I just hope for a win tomorrow. I hope to bring everything back together. And I want to see the barn rocking. Blake, you brought up a good point towards the end of the conversation there. Evan Turner said many times he hasn't won at the barn. I've talked to a lot of guys where they say the barn's a tough place to play. I think we get used to it a lot, but the barn's a tough place to play. So if we can get that energy rocking again, if we can get some W's head into the Big Ten season, it's going to be a lot of opposing players that's going to be talking about the barn and how tough it is and some of those memorable experiences like we just had. But I'm excited. I'm excited still for this season. Let's bring the energy, Trev. Bring the energy tomorrow for us, bro. Let's make something happen. So everybody, I appreciate you listening to another episode Outside the Barn. For Trevor Mbakwe, Blake Hoffarber, I'm Kendall Shell. We'll see you guys later. Sky you ma, go Gophers.
Sky you ma.